Paul, thank you so much, Mira, and thank you so much, My Jewish Learning, for your partnership. And it is great to be with you all wherever you are in the world. I see people are chatting their locations, which is wonderful. I see many friends here, which is great. Thank you for being here. Let's start with a little nigun before we fire up together and learn some exciting Torah together. Shalom, shalom, holy friends. I'm so happy to be with you. I'm so happy to be with you to learn about Hanukkah, which is starting this Sunday night. And we have a lot of exciting texts to look at, ideas to share. For the first 40-ish minutes, if you have thoughts or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And then we'll have the chance to unmute so we can hear from friends if you want to share any questions or thoughts as well. So just to begin, we have 3 mitzvot for lighting candles. What is the most important mitzvah of lighting candles? Write it in the chat. Stacy, this is not an Orthodox shir. This is a shir for all of Klal Yisrael. This is a learning session, pluralistic for all. So thank you for asking. Feel free to write in the chat. What is the most important mitzvah of lighting candles? Anyone? Yes. The most important mitzvah of lighting candles is Shabbat candles. Shabbat candles. Friday night are the Shabbat candles. And what is the reason for Shabbat candles? Traditionally, we say the reason is Shalom Bayit. Shalom Bayit, peace in the home. Looking inwards. Right now, what is the reason? Someone write in the chat. Why do we light Hanukkah candles? That's the second mitzvah. Someone remind us? Okay, maybe the chat takes a while. Persume Nisa. Persume Nisa, yes, as Krista writes, to remember the events and to publicize the miracles. What's the third mitzvah of lighting candles? I know some people want to say Yartzeit, but that's a beautiful custom. It's not a mitzvah. The third mitzvah of lighting candles is Havdalah. Havdalah, right? At the end of Shabbat on Saturday night. And so, Shabbat candles are looking inwards. The reason is peace in the home. Hanukkah candles are about looking outwards, publicizing the miracle. Havdalah candles with the intertwined wick is about interconnecting our inner lives and our outer lives, our private lives and our public lives. So it's a good reminder that the Hanukkah candles are not about rejuvenation, about privacy like Shabbat is. It's the opposite. It's looking outwards, publicizing the miracle. It used to be that the Hanukkah was out in the public square, right? Because we wanted to make it public, right? Due to Roman persecution and other forms of persecution, we moved the lighting predominantly to a small menorah inside the home. But still, the essence of the mitzvah itself is to do it externally, to publicize the miracle externally. Now, why do we use a candle at all? Why do we use a candle at all? And I saw, and I owe the credit to Rabbi Yehoshua Engelman for sharing this Sfat Emet. The Sfat Emet, this great Hasidic Torah, he teaches that we use a nair, we use a candle, because it aligns with Pesach. What do traditional Jews do before Passover? We do bedikat chametz. We take a candle, we walk around the house looking for chametz, right? Bedikat chametz. So he says, just like we use a candle searching for chametz there, we use a candle on Hanukkah. Why? Because the Greeks tried to kill us. And what did the Greeks believe? They believed in absolute truth. That there is one truth that the Greeks had figured out, and now they should spread it across the world. Proselytize and share that one truth with the world. But unlike the Greeks, what do Jews say? We are still searching. We are still searching, right? And so we use a candle because a candle represents searching. What is the Greek approach to truth? We have the absolute truth. Now we need to proselytize and teach people that truth. What is the Jewish approach to truth? We are still searching. There's a humility that we don't hold the absolute truth. So that's a beautiful sfat emet, a beautiful sfat emet. Now, the first source I want to look at here with you today is the great machloket, the great debate between Hillel and Shammai as to how we light the Chanukiah. So I'm going to share my screen here so we can look at this together. This debate emerges over here in Masechet Shabbat. Now, there's a whole political debate around why there's not a tractate of Hanukkah, right? There's so many tractates of the Talmud. Why didn't Hanukkah get its own tractate? And there's a lot of great answers to that, but part of it may be political, about political history in the Jewish community, who got power, who lost power. I'm going to read this in the Hebrew first, for those who appreciate that quickly, and then we'll translate it. You can see on the right here, Tanu Rabbanan, mitzvat Chanukah ner ish uveito, vehamahadrin ner l'chol echad ve'echad, vehamahadrin min hamahadrin Beit Shammai omrim yom rishon madlik shmona, mikan ve'elech potech v'holech, uveit Hillel omrim yom rishon madlik achat, umikan ve'elech mosif v'holech. Okay, so this is a fascinating text. We could spend our whole hour just in this text. We're not going to, but I want to unpack what just happened here. The sages taught in a Braita, right? A Braita is in an additional Talmudic text, a text from the rabbis of the era of the Talmud that was not included in the Talmud itself. And they said the basic mitzvah of Hanukkah is each day to have a light kindled by a person, the head of the household, for himself and his household. So what did that mean? One person would light the menorah, and they would light it on behalf of the whole family. And what would they light? One candle every day. One candle every day, one person. That's the basic mitzvah. You want to fulfill the mitzvah? 8 days, one person in the house lights one light every day. Oh, we don't see anybody doing that today. So then there's the Mahadran. What does Mahadran mean? You want to do it even more beautiful. You want to do it even more special. Those who are meticulous in the mitzvah of Hanukkah, they kindle a light for each and every person in the household. So good. You want to do even better? Then every person is going to light one candle every day, right? Very interesting. And to be sure, although some people think, again, just one person should light, according to this view of every person, it's not always obvious in Talmudic times or in medieval times who that includes. And the Rabbi, Maimonides himself, is very clear that this includes girls and women as well. Every man, every boy, every woman, every girl should all light Hanukkah every night. That's the second layer. Now here comes the third layer in the Talmud. The Mahadrin min HaMahadrin, the beautiful approach on top of the beautiful approach, is that those who are most strict, most meticulous and careful, adjust the number of lights daily, right? There's 8 nights. You don't just light one candle every day. You're going to change the number every day. Here's where the debate comes in. Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel, they disagree as to how to adjust the number we light every night. Beit Shammai says, on the first day, one kindles all 8 lights. And from there on, they decrease, right? The first night you light 8. On the last night, you only light 1. Until you get to the end. Beit Hillel, on the other hand, says, on the first day, you kindle 1 light, and from there on, gradually increase the number of lights until on the last day, 1 lights all 8 lights. Okay, friends, so what did we say here? What we said here so far is that the basic mitzvah, one person in the house lights 1 light every night. Okay, you want to do even better, you have the money for it, and you have the desire for it, then everyone who lives in the home should light one light every night. Okay? Then you want to do even better. You should adjust how much you light every day. What does it mean, adjust? There, Beit Shammai and Beit Hillel disagree. Beit Shammai says you should start with 8 and go down. Beit Hillel says you should start with 1 and go up. So what's at stake there? Right? Now let's give some Hebrew terms to that. Basic mitzvah, ner ish ubeito, right? That you should have 1 candle each night, and that's it. Then mahadrin is ner lekol echad ve'echad, a light for each person. Then you want to go mahadrin min ha-mahadrin, then what Beit Shammai says, potech v'holech, pochet v'holech, and Hillel is going to say mosi v'holech, right? And so what's at stake here? What are they debating ultimately? Beit Shammai says that based upon the view of korbanot, based upon the offerings as we see at Sukkot, they started with more and they went down. So he's basing it off a sacrificial model. The other view as to what he's basing it off is when we offer our light to the world, when Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, offer our light to the world, our light is diminished as it spreads in the world, right? Universalism diminishes our particularism for Beit Shammai, right? That when we go beyond Am Yisrael, we lose light, right? Beit Hillel, on the other hand, says Klal Yisrael, the Jewish people, are universal. And when we share our light and our Kedusha with the world, our light only becomes brighter. What does he base that on? Malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. When we, that our approach in the world should be one where we increase light and not decrease it. That's the approach of Rav Kook. Rav Kook says that Beit Shammai says, when we become universalistic, we are losing our light. And according to Beit Shammai, when we are universalistic, we actually increase light. That the approach that we only go up rather than down ultimately. Now, so that's a fascinating debate around how we should increase light in the world. Now, just as a reminder, what do we do today? Almost all of us will put our candles in right to left. We will put our candles in right to left, and we will do 1 on the first, of course, including the helper, 1, and then increase, as we say with Beit Hillel. Now, there is a view that in Messianic times we will go to the view of Beit Shammai. Why is that? Because the approach of Beit Hillel says we are starting with potentiality, right? We start, mitzvot is about potentiality, about what we can increase in the world. Right? Beit Shammai says we're already there. We're already reached actualization. It's not just about potentiality. And in the Messianic times, we're in a state of actualization, not just potentiality. So we should start with the max rather than increase. Yes, Rav Kook's approach is in line with Beit Hillel's. Rav Kook was a great universalist who ultimately did believe that we don't lose light by sharing light, ultimately. And so yes, the practice is today to increase as we go. And so we light 1 and then we increase each night. And there's various views as to what time of night to light. Some do it at Shkia when it starts to get dark. Some do it at Seit when it's totally dark. Many views in between. Some still today have only 1 Hanukkah in the home. Some take the approach of lighting many different menorahs in the home. And of course, we say the 2 brachot. We say the blessing of Lahadlik Ner Shel Hanukkah, or Lahadlik Ner Hanukkah, and then we light and we say Bayamim Mehem Bazman Hazeh. And then, of course, on the first night, only the first night, we say Shehechianu before we sing Hanerot Halalu and Ma'us Tzur. And so that is the basic approach here, which we will continue to unpack together as we go into the deeper meaning of what's going on here. Now, I want to just note that it's already so fascinating that the Talmud made Hanukkah about lighting candles, about the mitzvah of the oil, about the oil lasting, because it's pretty clear to to later rabbis that who cares about the rinky-dink oil? Whoop-de-doo. You thought you had oil for one night and you had oil for 8 nights. Yasha koach. Who cares? Who cares? I mean, yeah, it's a nice idea, but really, many rabbis make clear what really happened here was a military victory, right? A great oppressive giant of a force tried to wipe out the Jews, this tiny little poor minority, and somehow they survived. This is a celebration of heroism. This is a celebration of David beating Goliath. This is a celebration of spiritual resiliency. This is a celebration of how the small and the weak can outlast the strong and the physically mighty. Nonetheless, the rabbis didn't want to take a militaristic approach, didn't want to take this approach of survival, but took this approach of spirituality around the power of light. So now I want to move to that in that vein. I want to move towards that approach of light. You know, as Leonard Cohen famously taught, there's a crack in everything, and that is how the light gets in. It's a cold and it's a broken hallelujah. Indeed, there is brokenness in everything and in everyone, and our approach is to find the light within those broken spaces. So let's go back to another Talmudic text here coming from the tractate of Avodah Zarah. Now, Avodah Zarah, this is about Adam Harishon, the first person, Adam. And I want to remind us that this is not only kind of a historical figure or mythical figure from the Torah, but also Adam is all of us. This is the kind of existential self that we can all find ourselves within this first being. So the rabbi said here, our rabbis taught when primitive Adam saw the day getting gradually shorter, he said, woe is me, perhaps because I have sinned. The world around me is being darkened and returning to its state of chaos and confusion. This then is the kind of death to which I have been sentenced from heaven. All right, what's going on here? Adam is created on day 6. And on that first day of creation is the original sin, is this first sin of eating the fruit from Eitz Hadat Tov V'Ra, the tree of knowledge of good and evil. He eats from that tree. And what happens? As the day gets later, it starts to get dark because that's how days work. Night comes. But he doesn't know anything about day and night. He doesn't know anything about light and dark. He says, it's getting dark. I destroyed the world. It's getting dark because of what I did. Because of what I did. So he began keeping an 8-day fast, it says over here. But as he observed the winter solstice and noted the day getting increasingly longer, he said, this is the world's course. And he set forth to keep an 8-day festivity. In the following year, he appointed both as festivals. Now he fixed them for the sake of heaven, but the heathens appointed them for the sake of idolatry. So what's going on over here for the rabbis? This is actually incredibly fascinating. That Adam thinks that he destroyed the world, and now the world is going into darkness. Right? This is that we may existentially experience this ourselves as well. That maybe we morally or spiritually err and we feel we've destroyed the world. We see darkness externally, right? Seasonal depression, people whose mood changes as the seasons change as well. Not just mood, I mean their whole state of being in many ways. And sometimes we can blame ourselves for this, right? And Adam learns, this is the way the world works. It's not just about me. Now, what's amazing here is that the rabbis took a particularistic holiday, Hanukkah. What is Hanukkah about? Jewish survival, right? The miracle of Jewish survival, by and large. They took that particularistic message and they made it universalistic, right? If Hanukkah is about Jewish survival and resiliency, here the Talmud teaches an earlier origin of Hanukkah, which is about a universal human experience. Adam is not Jewish. Adam is a human being. He's well before Judaism exists. Hanukkah here is about an existentialist expression of despair and hope, right? That all human beings experience darkness in the world, and they might have despair, and Hanukkah is about how we keep hope and faith alive in a dark world. Okay, let's keep going here. So we say over here in Numbers, right, before the Hanukkah story at all, right? Hanukkah is not such a Jewishly important story. It is D'Rabbanan, not D'Oraita. It originates from the rabbis rather than the Torah, of course. But over there in Numbers, in the Torah, it says, speak to Aaron and say to him, when you light the lamps, right? This is a menorah, not a Hanukkah. There's 7 lamps, not 8. The 7 lamps shall cast their light toward the face of the menorah. Okay, very nice. That is the menorah over in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle. So then the rabbis teach here, the above verse may be compared to a king who had a beloved friend and told him, I'm coming to your home for dinner. Go and make preparations for me. His friend went and prepared a simple bed and a simple table and a simple lamp. Right? Someone's coming into the home. Let me prepare a little food in bed. When the king came, with him came his surrounding entourage and a golden lamp in front of him borne by a servant. When his friend saw all the honor of the king, he became embarrassed and hid all that he had prepared, for it was so ordinary. The king said, didn't I tell you I'm coming for dinner? Why haven't you prepared anything for me? His friend said, I saw all the honor that surrounds you, and I became embarrassed, and I hid everything I prepared for you, for it was so ordinary. The king replied, by your life, I reject everything that I brought. Because of my love for you, I only want to use your things. So too, the Holy One of Blessing is all light. Yet God tells Yisrael to light a menorah and candles. And as soon as they light the menorah, the Shekhinah arrives. I love this story. The story's, just to recap it, in case we missed any of that, the story basically says someone is going to host the king. They have got some modest food and some modest, bed. And then they see how wealthy the king is and how many people are accompanying the king, and they're embarrassed. So they hide all their stuff. They're embarrassed to show such meager offering. And yet God says, right, because God is the king, right? God says, no, I want your things. I want your things. And how does that extend to Hanukkah? God is light. God is eternal light, the brightest light possible, right? In a spiritual sense. And yet God wants our little rinky-dink menorahs. God wants our little human light because it's our light. So when we light the menorah, that divine light emerges, the Shekhinah shows up. I like to think of this story similar to when a child comes home with their art from preschool, right? I don't know about your children, but most children, when they bring home their art from preschool, let's just say it's not a Picasso. It's not a Picasso, right? Maybe it's nice, but this is not something that belongs in a museum by and large, right? But why does a parent love their child's art? Not because it's a masterpiece, but because they love their child who created this art, right? It doesn't matter objectively the quality of this art. What matters is the love behind this, the pride the child has with them when they bring it. So too, God, who is all light, loves our light because we bring it with love. In a similar vein, it says here in another midrash, when you kindle the lamps, God says to Moshe, it is not because I need human lights to be lit that I instructed you about the lamps, the menorah. Rather, it was so that you would receive merit, as it says in Daniel, and light dwells with him. And it says in Tehillim and Psalms, darkness is not dark for you, night is as light as day. Darkness and light are the same. To teach you that God does not need human lights. Know that when a person builds a house, they make their windows narrow on the outside and wide on the inside. When Shlomo, King Solomon, built the Beit HaMikdash, the temple, he did not make it this way. Rather, he made the windows narrow on the inside and wide on the outside, in order that the light should emanate outwards from the Beit HaMikdash and illuminate the outside, right? That this is about sharing light outwards. Hanukkah is about outreach, about engagement, about looking outwards. Here we see the opposite of that model, that God doesn't want our light kept inside. with God privately, but shared outward. This can be inspired by the great prophet Isaiah, where he writes over here in Isaiah, "Arise, shine, for your light has dawned, and the presence of the divine has shone upon you. For behold, darkness covers the earth, and thick clouds the peoples. But upon you the Lord will shine, and God's glory shall be seen over you. And nations shall walk by your light, and kings by your shining radiance." Isaiah continues, "I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness, and I have grasped you by the hand. I created you and appointed you a covenantal people for a light amongst the nations, to open the blind eyes deprived of light, to bring out the prisoners from confinement, from the dungeon those who sit in darkness." Right? You should be an or lagoyim. This is the origins of the phrase or lagoyim. You should be a light unto the nations by sharing your light. So too, Plato famously has Plato's cave. Plato's cave is about 4th century BCE, right? Isaiah is roughly 8th century BCE. Over around 400 years before Plato, Isaiah is talking about liberating those who are in the cave. Those who sit in the darkness of the cave need to be liberated towards light. Okay, friends, so we see here Isaiah telling us about this universalistic light. Now, how important is Hanukkah? How important is Hanukkah? Let's look at the Rambam, at Maimonides. Here's what Maimonides says over here. If a poor person has to choose between oil for both a house lamp for Shabbat and a Hanukkah lamp, or oil for a house on Shabbat and wine for Kiddush for Shabbat, the house lamp should have priority for the sake of peace in the household, seeing that even a divine name might be erased to make peace between a husband and wife. So here's a great teaching by the Rambam, Maimonides. Great indeed is peace, for as much as the purpose for which the whole of the Torah was given is to bring peace upon the world. As it is said, its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. You may recognize that from the Torah reading in Shabbat. Derachecha darchei noam v'chol nativoteha shalom. So what does Rambam say? He says, keep perspective, right? If religion doesn't foster peace, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong, right? Torah needs to be about shalom. Religion needs to be about peace, not about strife. So where do we start with peace? Reb Simcha Banim says over here, great 18th century Polish thinker. Reb Simcha Banim says, seek peace in your place and pursue it in another place. You cannot seek peace anywhere but within yourself until you find it there. Only if we find peace inside ourselves can we seek peace throughout the world. Rak imatza adam et hashalom betoch atzmo, harehu yachol levatsho b'chol haolam kulo. Only if you find peace inside yourself can you seek peace in the world, right? People can cause destruction if they're working for societal peace, but they haven't worked through their own traumas. They haven't found their own inner peace yet. And so Hanukkah here is about addressing our inner peace in order that we can extend it outward. Now, Rav Kook famously says, it says on the phrase, Talmidei Chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam, sages increase peace in the world. He says, no, they don't. Sages increase peace. Have you read the Talmud? Sages don't increase peace. They increase machloket. They increase debate. But Rav Kook says, exactly. True peace is not found in the silence of debate. True peace is found within argumentation. That a lasting peace will be based upon debate and argumentation. When a couple comes to me and say, Rabbi, will you marry us? One of the questions I ask them, I say, tell me how you fight. They say, great news, Rabbi, we don't fight. We got a great relationship. I say, you don't fight? You don't argue? I can't perform your wedding. I can't imagine how much is below the surface that you don't talk about, right? What do I want to know? That you argue, but you argue with dignity. You argue with respect. You bring issues up from below the surface, ultimately. That's what Rav Kook is saying, that shalom, peace, is not about no arguments in the world, no difference, no debate, but it is about bringing that argumentation up to the surface. Why should we do that? In order to inspire kindness in the world. The rabbis of the Talmud here say, Rabbi Shmuly taught the Torah begins with deeds of loving kindness and it ends with deeds of loving kindness. Gimilut chasadim. How does it begin with kindness? God dresses Adam and Eve when they find themselves to be naked. How does it end with kindness? God buries Moshe. God buries Moses ultimately. Right? We see here, this is about kindness. This is about peace. The Chavot HaLevavot taught, Me'at min ha'or doche harbe choshech. A little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. So friends, when it gets cold, how do we warm each other up? Well, the Hasidic thinkers taught that Noah was a tzaddik im peltz, a righteous person with a fur coat on. What does that mean? That the world is flooded, and what does Noah do? He doesn't save anyone, just his family and a male and female of every species. But everyone else drowns. So why is he at tzaddik im peltz? When you're cold, some people put a fur coat on. But what do the rabbis say you should do instead of that? One thing to do when you're cold is to put a coat on. The other thing to do is to light a fire. And that warms everyone around us. And that's the model of lighting a candle. We say we're in this world together. If I'm cold, I don't keep myself warm. I figure out how to warm myself while also warming others around us as well. The normal Musar approach is to fight bad, is to overcome and conquer evil, right? The Yetzer Tov, the good inclination, overcomes the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. But Rav Kook teaches over there that one is to ignore the bad and rather attempt to increase light so darkness fades away. By adding more learning, more knowledge, more mitzvot, the bad will disappear. So again, how do we address evil? One way is to fight evil. The other way is to add more light in the world and the evil will fall away. Very interesting. Where is that light to be found? The Kotzker Rebbe taught when Moshe goes up into the cloud to talk to God, that we see a dark cloud. Well, dark cloud, shouldn't that all be light? Right? Moshe is up there receiving Torah. Shouldn't it be light? Why is it a dark cloud? Kotzker Rebbe says, it's easy to be transformed by the inessential, to be distracted by sounds and bright lights, by celebrity and by fame, by tweets, so to speak. But Moshe knew that the real treasure is found in darkness, in humble places, in the inexpressible. If you see a person who speaks with perfect truth, with absolute truth, tied up with a bow on top of the present, we should be very wary, the Kotzker Rebbe says. The deeper truths are hidden, sometimes in dark places. Ner echad, ner lameya. Light one soul, and you light hundreds. Ultimately, a little bit of light dispels a lot of darkness. I want to share a story that my children came home with from their rabbi, I believe was Rabbi Billy, one of their teachers, that they shared with us. A king asked his sons to show him how they could fill a room. The first son, the prince, comes and shows his father a room full of barrels. Look, I put all the barrels into the room. The king said it was not full, since sand could still fit between the barrels. The second prince comes and shows his father a room full of barrels with sand in between them. The king said it was not full, since when the door was open, the sand fell out. Now the third prince shows up and shows his father an empty room with just a candle on the floor, which filled the room with light. So friends, that's the mashal, that's the story. What's the nimshal? What's the takeaway? A life cannot be full solely with stuff. You can't fill a life with stuff. When it's full with, it's got to be filled with light. The intangible stuff of inner life. That is the only way to ultimately fill a life. One more story before I go to our last source and then open it up for conversation here together. And I owe the credit of this idea to my friend Rabbi Micha Odenheimer in Israel. It says the miracle of Hanukkah may seem like a minor one. It may seem like a minor miracle. But there may be an important secret that's kind of hidden in here. The amount of oil that should have lasted only 1 day but lasts for 8 days. In Jewish lore, this is called hame'at hamachazik et hamaruba, that the little bit that holds on to the much. Very important phrase. A little bit holds much. Or the scant that holds the abundant. I want to think about this a little bit. In the Midrash of Noah's Ark, containing all the various species of animals, 2 by 2 or 7 by 7, it's called the little that holds much, right? This little ark that holds all the future species, the future of all life is in this little ark. So is the Mishkan, the holy tabernacle. All Israel fits into this small space on the day of its consecration. And so God himself, herself, God's self, which all the heavens cannot hold, fits into the Mishkan. In astrophysics, the little that holds the much is the tiny point from which the universe sprang. In physics, it's all about matter, which holds inside it unfathomable amounts of energy, E equals mc squared. In biology, it's the DNA, the double helix, which contains the plans for the entire human body. In the anatomy of sight, it is how through the pupil we can see huge mountains and great seas. The little that holds much is the triumph of quality over quantity. It is the breath we take in which has no taste or smell, seemingly no mass, but which keeps our soul to inhabit our body. It is the hope for ultimate goodness and redemption that animates us, even when we are totally unaware. Now, friends, let's talk about economic justice. Our economy today is based on the idea of growth, constant growth. This keeps us all in the thrall of market forces. Everything is subject to the great appetite for growth. Everything must be monetized and commercialized. The obsession with growth on which our economy is based, like the Leviathan, which Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer says lies at the bottom of the sea, is destined to devour everything. The corporate need to grow their profits, fueled by globalization, empowered China by moving manufacturing there, is cutting down our forests, fishing out our seas, and priming our atmosphere with carbon. It's commercializing the inside of our brain with antidepressants. It's turning us all from citizens to consumers. We need to remember the small, not just the large. Holiness, the pure oil, we don't need a lot, just a little bit of oil, a little bit of light. We need one drop. From that one drop, everything can come. A flame is holy because when you light a flame with another flame, you still have the first flame. Everything that is infinite is also infinitesimally small. Rabbi Nachman says that there are 2 reasons we can't see something. Either it is too far away to see it, or too close to see it. God, he says, is both too far away to see, but also too close to see. Infinitely large and infinitesimally small, blessing us with the scant that holds the abundant, that tiny flame of spirit, which can light up the whole world. Friends, Hanukkah is a meditation upon the small, upon the little that holds so much. Here's the last source I'm going to share before I open it up for a little conversation here. From my colleague and friend, Rabbi Danielle Hartman, who summarizes his father's approach on this approach to optimism without naivete. Optimism without naivete. The Jew requires the courage to dream and inspire for a better tomorrow. Pessimism is a luxury that Jews could never afford. On Hanukkah, we celebrate the fact that oil which was sufficient for only 1 day lasted for 8. My father teaches that the miracle of the first day is that we had the courage to light the menorah even though we did not know where the oil would come from in the future. The characteristic of the Jewish people is that we have the courage to dream, to yearn, and begin without certainty as to the future. The ultimate symbol of this strength and character for my father is the rebirth of modern Israel. As a people, we had the courage to say, next year in Jerusalem, for close to 2,000 years, and not to lose hope. Israel is the symbol of a people who have the courage not to let reality define who they are, to have the courage to dream that it will have a better tomorrow, and to devote oneself to making this dream a reality. Friends, Hanukkah teaches us to dream. And I'll close with this thought. Elie Wiesel liked to say that it was a miracle that Theodor Herzl and Sigmund Freud never met each other, even though they lived in the same district in Vienna. Why is that? Because Herzl would have said, "Im tirtzu ein zo agada." If you will, it is no dream. If you will, it is no dream. And Freud would have said, "You have a dream? Come lay on my couch. I will cure you of your dream." And in fact, friends, that's what the world does to us today. They try to cure us of our dream. Hanukkah says, friends, keep dreaming. Keep dreaming of a better life, of a better world. Never let the light go out. Hanukkah Sameach. I would love to hear from you.
One, I just want to start. Thank you, Rabbi Shmuly. I don't know if you've seen all the comments, including one who said this was a real machaya. So we're getting some Yiddish in. I think we have time for people to ask their own questions in their own voices. So I'm going to say, if you have a question, please use your raise hand function, and we'll unmute you, and you can ask your question. I know I'm expecting, Rabbi Shmuly, some thanks for this beautiful teaching, and also some more practical, to go with the Yiddish theme, tachlis details on how exactly do you do this. But if anyone has a specific question, I'd love to hear it. Okay, so we'll go with what we just said. So we just had this whole spiritual, lovely lesson about increasing the light during this time of year, finding hope. What does it mean to do that? How do you light the menorah?
Beautiful, beautiful. I invite others to share their thoughts on this beautiful question in the chat as well, of what does it mean to do this? What does it mean to cultivate something within us that is so powerful that when we share it, it is not diminished, but only increased? A form of spiritual resiliency that our giving is not a zero-sum game. Some people think, when I give my tzedakah, when I give my end-of-year donations, I have less, right? But is that true? Do we have less when we give, or do we have more? Moses Montefiore was asked by the king, "How much are you worth, Montefiore?" And he wrote a number and he gave it to him. He said, no, I see you're worth much more. I see all your properties and all your wealth. You're worth much more. He said, oh, you want to know how much I own? The number I gave you was how much I've given away this year. That's how I measure my worth. And so, friends, we may feel like giving is losing, or we may feel like actually my deepest sense of self is not what I have, but what I give. So too, as that applies to resources, as it applies to love. Love most certainly is like light, that loving more should not diminish us, but only fill us all the more so in interconnectedness. So how do we share our light? That is not an objective or absolute, there's no answer to that in that regard. It is a subjective and relative answer. Each of us has our own unique light to share in the world. And it's a question each of us can ask ourselves. What is the light that is uniquely mine that I can share with others? But friends, here's one more thing I want to say in that before our next question or thought, which is that I want us to remember in a dark world that there is always more love than hate at every moment. There is always more light than darkness. There is always more kindness than evil. We might not think so. Why? Because we watch the news too much. And when we watch the news too much, what we see is terrible things. And we can start to believe that those terrible things are so pervasive, so ubiquitous, that we live in a totally corrupt, broken world, right? But in fact, at every given moment, what's not in the news is a stranger holding the hands of a dying person, a teacher, millions of people doing that, teachers, millions of teachers who are teaching a lesson to a child once again, right? Millions of people who are doing acts of kindness that nobody even notices. So yes, friends, I hope that we will become a Hanukkah, that we will become a ner, a candle, and continue to shine that this season. Okay, Mira, let's go to our next question.
Beautiful. There are people who, Stacy would like to know, you're trying to increase the light. Can you light 2 menorahs? Yourself?
Oneself?
Yeah, if you yourself are interested in lighting multiple Chanukkiot,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, what a beautiful question. In terms of the bracha, we only make the blessing once each night, the blessings. However, if one wanted to add light more lights without the blessing, one most certainly could do that as many times as they wanted. In fact, what a nice idea to go out to places where there might not be such light and share that. And I see also in the chat, someone shares they hold by Shammai and Hillel, and with one Hanukkah, they light with the number going up, and one they go down. Very interesting. And so, yes, it's a beautiful thing to light as many candles as we can, as many people in the home, and to light in multiple places. Often we light in the shul in addition to lighting at home as well. Or we might go to a public lighting in addition to a private lighting. Thank you for that.
We have, again, lots of thanks for this wonderful teaching, which I'd like to echo. Rabbi, is it possible we could make the source sheet available to everyone after?
Happy to. Is there whatever way is best for you to do that?
Great. So I think Chuck will make sure that you get the source sheet in the follow-up email where we'll have the recording. Okay, great. We have Natalie who has a question. You should be great.
Thank you very much. I just, with that other question about the more light, I was raised that everyone in the family had their own menorah, and that there was no reading to be done by that light, so additional candles had to be lit. Mm-hmm. So our dining room would glow because there were, there could be 6 people that came for Hanukkah one night, and everybody would bring their own menorah, and it was beautiful. Now, where I live now, and I live alone, we always put our menorahs in the window. I can't do that where I live now. It wouldn't be safe for me. I live in a very it just wouldn't be a good idea. But I loved the fact that each of us had our own symbol of what Hanukkah meant to us, because we were allowed to pick them out. I still have mine. When my parents passed away, I got that one as well. So I like both of those.
Very nice.
On
you.
Hanukkah.
Beautiful.
As my blessing to them.
Thank you. That's beautiful to keep that alive. Thank you, Natalie, for that. And I want to pick up on the first thing you shared over there as well, which is not using the Hanukkah lights, which is indeed the Jewish tradition, to not use them to read by, for example. And I want to share one thought on that. One notion of kedusha, of holiness, that I like is that you can't make the non-instrumental instrumental, which is to say, just as a human being is an ends in themselves, the holy is an ends in itself. That's why you can't use a synagogue as a shortcut. Synagogue is a holy place, so you can't just pass through it to get somewhere else. So too, a person is an ends in themselves. You can't use a person to get something you want, right? A person is an ends in themselves. So we can't use the light of the menorah for other benefits. It's an ends in itself. That's why we need other light to use our reading by. So thank you for sharing that, Natalie. That was helpful.
Wonderful. looking through the comments to see if there's anything we missed, but if anyone is still holding on to any questions, let your light shine in the comments and ask your question. I hope it's okay to pick that up there, Rabbi. Let's see. Is there the best way to, on the first night, obviously, we're only lighting one candle, but as we go on, is it better to do left to right or right to left?
Thank you for asking. Yes, so there are many different customs out there, and I can't even attempt to represent them all. But the most common custom that we will experience is placing them in from right to left, but lighting them from left to right. And we're lighting them from left to right so that the first one we light is the new one of the night. And so on the seventh night, we will light the seventh, the furthest from the left first, working our way over ultimately.
Thank you so much. Do you want to leave us with a closing thought, Rabbi?
Absolutely. Thank you for, first of all, thank you again for your beautiful facilitation and invitation to participate in this today. And I just want to offer us the bracha, and I hope you'll give me the blessing back as well, that we allow Hanukkah to work. Let's allow it to work. We don't just check the box, did it, ate a donut, had a latke, spun a dreidel, lit the menorah, right? That's beautiful. Let's do it. But then we want it to work. What does it mean to work? Well, it means a lot of things. But a few things it might mean is for us to double down on what it means to ensure Jewish continuity. If we're celebrating the miracle of Jewish survival, how do we support Jewish continuity? It may also mean universalism, doubling down on bringing our light into spaces where there's oppression or injustice in the world. It may also be rekindling our sense of hope or faith or optimism in the world where there's so much darkness. It may also mean that we're going to become a light ourselves and go out into the world to bring light to dark spaces wherever we can. I wish everyone a Hanukkah Sameach. Thank you for adding joy to my holiday season by joining us today. And of course, wishing everyone good health and strength and many blessings. I look forward to continuing to learn with you at Valley Beit Midrash and at My Jewish Learning and everywhere else we can partner.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Chag Sameach to everyone. Happy Hanukkah. And we'll be sending out the recording so you can revisit this in the days ahead. Bye, everyone.